Hey guys, Harry here. Hope you're all okay this Easter Sunday. It was great to see some of you online at the youth social on Zoom on Wednesday night, and I'm really looking forward to seeing some of those upcoming video challenges. So hopefully you've been following Jesus' journey this week since last Sunday, since Wendy and Simon spoke about Palm Sunday, where Jesus was welcomed into Jerusalem like a king. Then through the week he's been accused, betrayed, arrested, before being nailed to a cross and killed. He's been buried in a tomb, and then today, where he has risen from that death. So I want you guys to go grab your Bibles if you've got one, grab your chocolate, sit back and listen as I read through Luke chapter 14, verses 13 to 35. The road to Emmaus. Now, that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along?" They stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened there in these days?" "What things?" he asked. "About Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what is more, it is the 3rd day since all this took place. In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning but didn't find his body. They came and told us that they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Then some of our companions went to the tomb and found it just as the woman had said, but they did not see Jesus." He said to them, "How foolish you are! And how slow to believe all the prophets had spoken. Did not the Messiah have to suffer these things and then enter his glory?" And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all of Scriptures concerning himself. As they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus continued on as if he was going further. But they urged him strongly, "Stay with us, for it is nearly evening. The day is almost over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread. He gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he disappeared in their sight. They asked each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the Scriptures to us?" They got up and returned at once to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 and those with them assembled together and saying, "It is true! The Lord has risen and has appeared to Simon." Then the two told what had happened on the way and how Jesus was recognized by them when he broke the bread. So, what do we see? On the road to Emmaus, two travelers walking out away from Jerusalem, talking about the great sadness that they had seen happen to him, when suddenly they were joined by Jesus himself, unknown who he was because they didn't recognize him. This can be interesting for us today. As I walk around on my allotted exercise time in the midst of the coronavirus outbreak, it's easy to get caught up in the hype, the fear, the worry of it all. We see the posters on the walls, people wearing masks and gloves, sometimes crossing the road away from you. The weight of that can keep us from seeing the good in the situation. And maybe asking God, why? Why is this happening? Well, interestingly, these two travelers felt in a similar way. So Jesus then spent time with them, talking about how God's plan through his people had led to this point, and that there was hope, and it didn't end in death. It then goes on to describe that once they had arrived in the village, that they asked Jesus to stay with them as it was now the evening. So at their evening meal, Jesus gave the blessing and broke the bread, giving it to them. They instantly recognized this sign as his broken body and realized it was Jesus himself with them right there. Then, poof, disappeared. It's hard to see Jesus for who he really is when we are in the midst of these things. You might find that as well, especially now with our current situation. It's hard sometimes to see Jesus as king, but he is. And that is the truth. Regardless of how we may feel, we know that Jesus' resurrection signifies victory over death and the gift of freedom to have a relationship with God. And more than that, we can use this power, the power of the good news that's written here in the Gospels, to keep us going. The truth is that life can be tough, and things like the coronavirus can make us feel down. But the gospel of who Jesus is and what he did for us on that cross gives us resilience to keep going. Paul talks about this in his letter to the Corinthians, where he's talking about we depend on God to keep us going through the struggles of life because we know God can sustain us. In part, Easter means we can keep going because God has won and Jesus is King. Psalm 56 is really encouraging. It's encouraging us not to fear, but to walk in the light of that life. Remember that God has equipped each of you with a spirit that doesn't make you afraid or timid, but a spirit that gives you power, love, and self-control, as we see in 2 Timothy 1:7. So I pray that you go out into your day and week with that attitude. Be powerful, love those around you, and use your gifts to share where you find your hope. The King is alive.